about this way of thinking is it puts so much focus on the self. You know, first of all, this level of thinking, which is very predominant in our culture, and this is almost like that merry-go-round, that roundabout, that circle of life. It seems like that that self is the measure of all things. Now think about this. Now I don't know if any of you guys are interested in sports, but what would it be like if you went to a baseball game and the actual players were also the umpire of the game? Would that make any sense? I mean, was that pitch a ball or was it a strike? Well, it depends upon whether you're at bat or whether you're pitching the ball, doesn't it? You see, this level of thinking is based upon arbitrary absolutes. There are no absolutes in this type of equation. It's one of the problems. The second problem is the personal response. I mean, which it is very important. I mean, I'm not trying to minimize that, but one of the challenges of personal response is how much is enough. You know, I submit to you that this equation doesn't have the power or the adequacy for us to always respond to our life events. Many of you have faced things in your life that just impossible to get through. And so there has to be another level of thinking. And that's what I want to kind of talk to you about today, is this different level of thinking. It's one that brings absolutes into the equation. We know, now I'm kind of intimidated because I got a math teacher here, but we know that 2 plus 2 equals 4, right? Dostoevsky, I don't know, he was a writer in Russia. He said that 2 plus 2 equals 5 is not without its attractions. In other words, it would be great, right? It would be great if we could believe that, you know, if this person believes it's true, then it's true for them. And if I believe it's true, then it's true for me. But you see, we know that there are absolutes. And so as we begin to look at this third level of thinking, we begin to add this other element into the framework of our thinking. This higher power, we kind of have to ask ourselves some questions. The first thing is we have to realize is that there really is evidence for a higher power. And I don't want to get too much into this, but I want to begin with just 3 things. If you can just imagine 3 circles. The first circle is science. That may sound kind of crazy, but a lot of people say that science disproves God, but it's just the reverse. If you look at the scientific evidence, that the universe had a beginning, and that no one has an explanation for that. In fact, science doesn't have an explanation for that. You know, the thought that something came from nothing, it's just impossible to explain. And so we know that somehow something came from something. I don't want to get too much into that, but there's a lot of scientific evidence to support that. But that doesn't get us there. The other circle that we have to look at is the circle of something that we know better than science. We know ourselves. We don't need to put this in a test tube. We know ourselves. We know that there's an external reference, that there are strong moral feelings about things that we can't explain. You talk to anybody long enough, you'll find out that they have some very strong moral feelings about things. And the third thing is history. If you take all those circles together, it really gives us a good framework for understanding that there is actually a higher power. And what I want to submit to you is this new element that we add into our formula of thinking is grace. And it's actually not a term. You know, terms add and subtract. Like I said, I'm not a really smart mathematician. But this is more of a factor. And I call it the G factor. Are y'all following this? Does this make sense to y'all? And so this G factor, first of all, it multiplies and it changes the whole way, the whole framework of thinking. And it doesn't minimize our responses. Our responses are still important. It doesn't trivialize them in any way. But what it does is it gives us a tool to be able to to respond to life circumstances in a way that not only makes sense, but it gives us this tool to be able to respond in a way that gives us all kinds of new tools, because it changes the source from ourself, which is inadequate, to God.